Imagine waking to a life turned upside down by a single discovery, betrayed by the very ones you trusted the most. This is the story of a man who found himself at the heart of such a maelstrom, where friendships and marriage collided in the most unexpected ways. My wife, a 26-year-old woman named Lisa, has abused my confidence by having an affair with one of my closest friends. This friend, a 27-year-old male named Kevin, has been engaging with Lisa behind my back. The scenario has been extremely difficult for me to digest because it involves not just my spouse's treachery, but also the disloyalty of someone I considered a close friend. A little backstory. When we met, I was 22 and attending another friend's wedding. She was a dear friend to the bride, and I am the groom. They put us at that table so we could get together. When I first saw her, I was astounded by how stunning she looked, and when she sat down, we began to speak. We discovered we had many things in common. We instantly clicked. We talked for a while, ate dinner, and then proceeded to the dance floor. We danced and drank all night. We ended up kissing in the center of the dance floor, and when we drew away from our companions, the bride and groom approached us and inquired what was going on between us. They were very pleased to play matchmaker. We basically shrugged it off and continued our night. We didn't exchange numbers as we left, but about a week later she texted me and asked me out. Bride gave her my phone number. I, of course, said yes, and it led to a romance. The relationship was excellent. We never fought, save for little disagreements, and nothing serious happened. I asked her to marry me approximately 2 years into our relationship, and we married less than a year later. We had been married for just over a year when it all came crashing down on me. I was annoyed by a few little details just before our first anniversary. She grew increasingly protective about her phone. Girls' nights became increasingly common, and our sex life was virtually non-existent. I brought this up several times, but was told that I was overreacting and that I was allowing my insecurities to control me. She would carry on as if what I felt and tried to say did not matter to her. So I gradually became chilly. I stopped kissing her goodbye as I left for work, and we rarely spoke unless it was something significant. I borrowed her phone and laptop one night while she was sleeping and searched through her texts, emails, and messenger apps, but found nothing. And after reading the stories on here, I checked her automobile. I grabbed her keys and searched her car for a second phone. I knew what was going on right away, but I wanted all of the evidence in case I had to confront her. I didn't want her to say something foolish like it only happened once. I searched through the phone and only found one number. I read through every message, linked the phone to my computer, printed out every message and photo, and spent the night looking up divorce lawyers. I spent hours of my day in my home office researching lawyers' bias until I found one I liked and emailed him. But since it was Saturday, he wasn't in the office and wanted to know who the guy was. So I took my phone, entered in the number I wanted to call, and pretended to be Spectrum because who doesn't have Spectrum? But Kevin, a contact information appears. It took me a minute to realize what was going on, but once I did, I blew up. I was ranting and cursing in my office when my wife opened the door to check on me, but when I saw her, I told her to get out. She closed the door and went into our room. I had never mentioned it to my wife or raised my voice above a usual volume throughout my entire day. I never left the office. I was silently raging, staring at the wall. I contacted one of my wedding friends, Michael, and told him I needed to go get a drink and asked if he could join me. He heard something in my voice when he inquired whether I was all right. I told him I wasn't and that I really needed a drink. So, without saying a thing, I took all of the printouts and departed for the bar. I arrived first and ordered for shots of Jack and a beer. I was on my last shot when my friend Andrew arrived and said, "What is going on?" I told him straight out that he was cheating. He offered me condolences and I asked if he wanted to speak with you, telling him it was Kevin. He became plainly irritated. He was the one who introduced me to Kevin and all he could say was, "I apologize," over and over. Kevin and I were never very close. We wouldn't invite each other to hang together, but if we saw each other at a gathering, we were friendly. I advised them not to tell anyone because I had only just found out and hadn't even spoken with Daniel, a lawyer. I requested him not to tell his wife, and if she inquired what was wrong with me, to tell her I was experiencing troubles at work. And he agreed. We drank and talked for the majority of the night. Then I called an Uber and got home around 3 a.m. It was the first time I looked. At my phone since calling Andrew there were missed calls and a slew of texts from people asking where I wanted to be and whether I was okay. When I went home, she was asleep on the couch. I just strolled up to our bedroom and fell asleep. I awoke to her in the bed, so I dressed and left the house. I drove to pick up my car and drive to my office, where I immerse myself in work for the day before returning home about 10 p.m. To my surprise, my wife was there to greet me, and she informed me she had prepared dinner. She asked whether I wanted her to reheat it. I told her no and retired to bed. She followed shortly after, asking what was wrong with me. I told her to leave me alone since I wanted to sleep. She continued bothering me. Eventually, I snapped and roared at myself to stop. I was trying to sleep and get away. The next morning, I received an email from the lawyer asking for a meeting later in the day, which I confirmed and prepared for. When I went downstairs to leave, Lisa had made breakfast and asked if we could talk. I made a little plate and sat down. She began by saying, "I've been acting differently and going on and on about how I changed, and I want to know why." I informed her that work had been tough and would soon be finished. I completed, "Up till now, I have to go." I went to my office and counted down the minutes before I met with the lawyer. When I departed, I informed my assistant that I was going out to lunch with a client. My wife would occasionally phone my office and leave the appointment with the lawyer, which went well. And I handed over everything I had acquired on her, and the lawyer told me, "Well, I'm sorry for everything that's going on, but I'm glad you gathered all this information. You see, we live in an adult state. Zero wife has no claim on the majority of your money." I told him I hadn't even considered it. I was just thinking. I had to divorce her as soon as feasible. He wanted to keep the proof, but I told him I'd rather you simply make copies because I hadn't told my wife yet. And I didn't want to hear any excuses. He agreed and instructed his aide to make copies. I inquired when she would be served with the papers. He told me around 2 weeks. I thanked him and departed. I went home to confront my wife when I arrived. She was not home, so I called her. No response. Calling again. No response. I texted her, "I don't care if you're riding Kevin right now. Get home. We need to talk." She unexpectedly calls me. Not a minute later, he asked what I was talking about. All I told her was, "Get home now." She arrived about 15 minutes later, and I told her, "Wow, look at that 15 minutes. That is almost the same distance between here and Kevin.s, isn't it?" She stared at me, bewildered. I gave her a minute to recover herself, but she only stared at me, so I said, "Well, nothing to say." She attempted to deny gaslighting me, and I let her continue. She got fired up and started insulting me. I slapped my fist on the table to silence her. Then brought out the proof and displayed it to her from the side, saying, "Look at this mountain of things I've gathered against you." Then I showed her the printouts, one by one. She then orders me to stop and starts crying. She tried to apologize and said she loved me. I asked, "What happened to that energy you had before? You were so determined to degrade and disrespect me just a minute ago." She tried to hug me and apologize. I held out my hand and told her not to touch me. She says, "Well, go to the bedroom and do whatever I want." I looked her deep in the eyes and said, "Sweetheart, I will never touch you again. Would you like to know who else has these photographs and messages? Dear, I'm divorcing you now. Get a bag, get your clothes, and get out of my house." That was 3 days ago, and I still haven't heard from her. I apologize for the length of this message, and if there are any spelling mistakes. I'm fascinated about folks who have been where I am. What can I expect here? Thank you for reading. If you want opinions, Raising Luminoso has won. Bravo! You handled it like a champion. First and foremost, remove her from all financial accounts to protect yourself. And change the passwords on everything. Next, get an STD test and please don't do anything in rage. Meaning as much as you want to hurt her or Kevin. Do not take your lawyer's advice and ask him if you can change the locks on the house. Because she has practically abandoned the marital home. Avoid alcohol and drugs, and prepare for the inevitable. That is the begging, gaslighting, and blame shifting that will occur. She may also try to portray you as the antagonist in this scenario. To justify her betrayal. So tell everyone what she did and why you are divorcing her. This includes parents and friends. And if Kevin has a girlfriend or spouse, it's especially her. Exercise can help you channel your wrath and rage. It will help you relax and tear up so you can sleep. As the truth of the situation dawns on you, it becomes increasingly difficult. Best of luck and keep us posted. The ARP's response is really appreciated and I will follow the suggestion. That lawyer told me that all communication between her and I should go through him. So ideally I won't be talking to her at all. Kevin does have a fiancée and I will inform her enforcement ex about it. How do you intend to approach Kevin's fiancée? I'm sure he knows, as do you, and will be on the lookout for anything in the mail. Or your arrival at the house, among other things. Hopefully he doesn't have access to her emails or social media. The OP responds, I've heard her a few times. I'll give her a number and will try to contact her until she responds. If she doesn't, I will go to their house when he is at work. I'll leave a note in her car asking her to call me. I will not let that boss get away with it. Tailbone, 77 hours of talking. Good for you, man. Quick and decisive action. I'm sorry you got caught up with another false piece of garbage out there. But you'll come out on top eventually. They can always explain. Yeah. When she receives the divorce papers, she will most likely continue to beg and cry. It did not signify anything. I do not love him. Another piece. Exposure to everything close and distant after. Be strong, buddy. Yikes. I am very sorry, OP. Your feelings in those moments were very valid. It would be difficult to look someone in the eye. Let alone desire to be in the presence of someone who had deceived you like Wei. Particularly with a pal. I'm pleased you had someone to go talk to right now. A supportive community makes all the difference. I believe you've made all of the proper decisions. And you've handled yourself with dignity throughout. At this point, if I were you, I would simply accept the advice of your lawyer. Update 1. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who left comments or messaged me. I sincerely appreciate the compliments and advice you have all given. I tried to keep up with the comments, so if I didn't respond to yours, I apologize. In this update, I try to address some of the most often requested questions. If you haven't read the first section, please visit my page. It is still present after I posted the first half of this. You guys gave me a lot of advice, and I followed most of it. This morning, I plan to perform a lot of damage control in my life. So I made an appointment with my doctor to get tested for STDs. And I have an appointment in 2 days. Next, I began contacting everyone close to me, including my father and a few acquaintances. They've all been quite supportive, offering advice and asking if I needed anything. But I declined because I already had this garbage under control. I then started contacting her family. I texted her parents, thanking them for welcoming me into their family. And expressing my gratitude for everything they had done for me. But Lisa and I are getting divorced, and I will miss them tremendously. Not really, they were suffocating. And while they were wonderful individuals, I'm glad I no longer have to deal with them. Then I informed them they were welcome to ask any questions they had. I hadn't heard from them in a while, so I went on to Lisa's sister. This hurt since her sister and I were excellent friends. And I felt this would jeopardize our connection. I texted her, hey, I apologize for having to SMS you this. But men are going to divorce, and I wanted you to know I'd like to thank you. You've always treated me like a brother. I'll be available if you ever need anything from me. Around the time I sent the text, her parents answered. I'll type up what happened throughout the chat. We're sorry to hear this, parents. What happened? Why hasn't he mentioned anything to us? M has been involved in at least a year-long romance. I suppose it began before our wedding. I'm not sure why she hasn't contacted out, but I believe you should call her. She left the house. I assumed she would have gone to, you know. We have not heard from her. We'll call her. Thank you for telling us. Are you certain she was having an affair? I am positive. I found their texts. We're very sorry she did that. We will try to contact her after dealing with her relatives. I moved on to Kevin's fiancée. I'm not sure if I informed you that he was engaged in the first section. I know it came up in several of the comments. I expected this to be difficult and that Lisa and Kevin would have devised some master strategy. But either Lisa did not tell him what I discovered, or they are simply stupid. I texted her around 2 p.m. and asked if we might meet for coffee or something around 2 or 5. She accepted and invited me to meet her at some disgusting hipster coffee shop across from her workplace at 230. I arrived first, ordered my awful coffee and waited a few minutes. She strolled in, ordered hers, and came to join me. I told her there was no simple way to say what I was about to say, so I would just blurt it out. Jay has cheated on you with my wife. It has been going on for almost a year. She was clearly stunned, so I told her I just found out a few days ago. I know I should have told you then, but I had a divorce to start and my own personal issues to deal with. She inquired as to how I found out. I told her everything mentioned in the first post. I then asked if she wanted to view the proof I'd compiled and pulled out a binder. She took the binder, flipped through the words and images, and then began to cry softly. I informed her she was welcome to take extra copies of the binder if she wanted to confront Kevin and test his honesty. She thanked me, stood up and took the binder, and I advised her to let me know if she needed anything. She nodded and went away, feeling disheartened. I know you all advised me to stay sober, keep a level head and so on, but my world came crumbling down around me. After this week, I plan to spend it sitting on my back porch, drinking, smoking cigars, and blasting music. I will quit feeling sorry for myself, get back to my regular schedule. On a more upbeat note, I've already packed up the majority of her belongings, including clothing and jewelry. I also included our wedding book and every photo of her in the boxes, if and when she returns for her belongings. I do not want her to stay here any longer than necessary. Also, before you ask, no, I did not spoil her clothes, save for a few picture frames. Nothing is broken. Right now, nothing else is happening. I informed everyone that I needed to attend my doctor's appointment as scheduled. My lawyer is hard at work to get me out of this mess, and 90% of her belongings are in boxes. I honestly don't know what's left. If she stays out of my hair, this could be the easiest divorce ever. Thank you for reading. Advice is always appreciated. I'm sorry she placed you in this position to inform everyone what had transpired. That is an extremely unfair situation to be in. You should not have to face the blame of adultery, which affects not only your partnership, but other mutual relationships. Update 2. Hello, everyone. I apologize. I've been MIA for a bit and haven't responded to comments or messages, but I believe I'm caught up. And now for an update. So since the upgrade, I've been enjoying my pity party. There is a lot of drinking going around. I say this is my first semi-sober moment since learning about everything, and I can't really express how I feel. I suppose numb is accurate. Word. In my previous update, I mentioned that I had alerted everyone, and the only person who did not react was my sister, with whom I was really close. So that night, I wrote the update. After posting, I continued to drink until I passed out on the back patio, surrounded by a bottle and a few beer cans. I awoke to the fragrance of food being made. My first thought was of Christ, and came back thinking that breakfast would make up for what she had done. I erupted into a rage and threw myself out of the chair, ready for a screaming match. However, to my astonishment, it was my sister. Call her Rebecca remained there for a bit, trying to calm myself back down. But when Rebecca noticed I was awake, she ran over to me and put her arms around me. She said nothing to me. She simply took my hand, walked me to the table, and placed a dish in front of me as I ate. She apologized and informed me that when her sister arrived at her place, she simply stated that we were experiencing troubles and that everything would be okay in a few days. Then she explained that when I texted her that we were separating, she asked Rebecca if it was okay. Why is he divorcing you? Apparently, Rebecca broke down and told him everything. I scoffed and added, there's no way she told you everything, before telling her everything that had transpired. Rebecca informed me that Rebecca had stated that it was a one-time incident and that I was exaggerating the situation. I told you I don't want to get back together with Rebecca, and if that's why she's here, she's wasting our time. Then if she contacts Rebecca, Rebecca should advise her to seek legal counsel. She chuckled and said she was not there for her sister. She was here for me. She assured me that while she would be there for my sister, she and I are friends, and she would not desert me, especially since I had done nothing wrong. I rose up, went to her side of the table, and simply hugged her. I was so anxious about all this BS. That going on would ruin her and our friendship, and hearing her say that made me feel a lot better. Rebecca remained with me for 2 days. Guest bedroom, you heathens. You departed this morning as I was about to leave for my cabin. I had it before the marriage and am unable to touch it now. I was gathering my hunting and fishing gear. I asked if she might join me, but I told her that as much as I wanted to, she should probably go check on her sister. She agreed, hugged me, and departed. I am deeply grateful to you for being there for me, and before you say that, she's into me. She is not. She's also 20, which is far too young for me. It's just a really wonderful friendship. I almost forgot to mention that I went to the doctor, was tested, and the results should be in on Monday. I've contacted Kevin's fiancée several times to check on her. She told me she was all right and didn't know what to do. I informed her that if she wanted to meet any time in the next week or two, she could vent. I'm happy to listen. I'll be here for a little while. So if you have any questions or advice, please leave a comment or mail me. But I'm leaving for the weekend. There is no internet out there, therefore I will not be available this weekend. I'd also like to thank everyone for reading, reaching out, and providing such positive feedback. You've all been a beacon of light in my life during a genuinely terrible period. To anyone going through this as I am, all I can advise is keep your head down and focus on what you truly want. Set your goals one at a time, whether you are divorced or reconciled. In my circumstance, I contacted the doctor and informed everyone. Close. Keep it off the internet. Set aside time to express your feelings. Thank you again and apologies. These updates are always overly long. Let's see how the community reacts. Turbo in 77 says, I'll say it again. I am very proud of you for how you are handling this nonsense. Doom in Liss are still insane. She does a lot of ridiculous things. It should be all right in a few days. Yeah, by Tuesday or Wednesday she'll know just how beautiful things will be. W is real and I know your friendship will last for a long time. Go get some much needed RR now and let the chips fall where they may. F you. P.S. The lengthier the update the better. It's great to know that we've got your back. True friendship. Update 3. Hello everyone. It's been a minute but I thought I'd give you an update on everything that has happened. If this is your first time seeing these postings, you can visit my page to see my other entries. You'll definitely need context. And my final post. I told you about her coming to my house and staying for a few days. Then she departed as I was leaving to go hunting at my cabin. Good news. I received a book. A lovely 8-pointer. I got them on my first day out there, which was great since it freed up the remainder of my time to go fishing. I only got 2 but they were nice sized. So I ate one for supper and butchered the other. Aside from a drink or two, I spent the rest of my day in the cabin cleaning my home and admiring the views of nature. I spent my trip sober since I had promised myself that I would only drink for the last week. Now we'll move on to the final few days. I received a call from a doctor at a mall. Clean. It's not such a surprise as Rebecca and I haven't had many passionate nights in a few months. However, you can never be certain. I contacted Kevin's fiancée but did not hear back for some time. She ultimately responded explaining that she is currently staying with her family. She didn't go into much detail but her living with her family suggests, as I do, that things aren't going well. At the very least, she is safe with her family and has all of the necessary support. I assured her that if there was anything I could do, she only had to reach out. She invited me to meet for coffee the next day, which I gladly accepted. The next day, we met at the same horrible hipster coffee shop and talked for nearly 2 hours. We discussed everything that had transpired with Rebecca met and she wanted to know what actions I was taking. Whether I was divorcing or if there was any way I could reconcile. I informed her that once someone cheats in my book, that's it. That is the level of selfishness and disrespect required to cheat, let alone for a year. She clearly did not care about me. I asked her about her plan. She expressed her confusion about everything. Everything she thought was true turned out to be a lie. She wasn't sure what her next step should be, therefore she should go on. Or should she forgive him? I told her, if you can forgive someone for cheating on you for that long, she's a better person than me. She told me that her entire family was encouraging her to forgive him and marry. I told her I was going to be straight with her and added, just because it's what your family wants doesn't mean you have to go along with it. Then she said, Kevin obviously doesn't care about marriage or what it means. He cheated on you. The fiancé is with my wife. If it doesn't make it clear, he's not a good match for marriage. I told her she needed to do what she thought was right, and not let anyone else make the decisions that would affect her life. I told her that when I found out. All I could think about was how my heart could mislead my brain into thinking of a way for me to accept and forgive her. But I simply couldn't do it. I also stated that I only talked to one person. But I had already made up my mind and no one could change it. I'm sure you had a good notion of what you were going to do when you went to visit your family. But there were too many people in and they all had their own opinions. I finished by telling her that all she needed to do was trust her instincts, because her head and emotions would always lie to her. However, her intuition tells her that something is wrong. 9 times out of 10, her instincts are probably correct. She thanked me shortly after and we parted ways to go home. The following day, I received notification from my lawyer that I had been successfully served at work. I congratulated him for all of his efforts, particularly given the time constraints. Not long later, W called to tell me that Lisa had not left her room all day and was sobbing in bed. I informed her she had been served and was probably realizing how badly she messed up. W inquired as to how the cabin was and whether I had received anything. I told her everything I did and how much time I spent there. We talked for a moment before hanging up. After preparing myself in my house for my wife's explosion, I believed she'd do it shortly, now that she has been served. So now I'm walking patiently, taking my time. I have Advil on standby. For what? I can only imagine it will be a poor 8. I told my friend and he agreed that if Lisa came up, he'd rush over to be a witness in case everything else failed. I am now waiting for Hurricane Lisa to pass through my house. When she does, I will bring out another update. Thank you for reading. Let's quickly see what the community has to say. A chump claims it's been 33 years. Buy some security cameras. Begin calling lawyers. Freeze your credit. Move half of the money so she can access it. Secure your documents. Take pictures of everything. If you believe she will damage your property. The AP responds. Cameras have been installed both inside and outside the house since we moved in. Lawyer stated there's nothing I can do because it's also her house. I also can't withdraw any money from our joint account until the divorce is official. But I don't need to add much more. Yikes. What kind of family pushes someone to stay with her fiancé and fully commit to someone who has yet to show that they can commit to even one person? Hello again everyone. I know I just posted 2 days ago, but I have some news. I wasn't on here right after I posted. But something crazy happened. And I didn't have time until now to respond to the comments on my last article. So I apologize for not responding. Read over them quickly. Run through everything that has happened thus far starting at the top. Then I'll move on to an update for everyone who is seeing my post for the first time. My wife is giving the standard indicators. Your partner's having an affair. So I snooped and discovered a second phone in her car. I quickly looked for a lawyer, hired one, and began the legal process. I confronted my wife and after a heated altercation, she packed her luggage and left. I immediately contacted everyone who was close to us, including my friends, father, and her family. Then I phoned his fiancée Sophia and told her everything I knew and could prove. She was then served 2 days ago at her workplace. And now you are up to date. I was ready for them to arrive at the house and go ballistic around an hour after my last post. I had no idea why she would do anything. But given everything that had happened, I never truly knew the woman. I went around checking all of the cameras I had up to make sure they were working properly, both indoors and outdoors. I called my friend and told him that my serve was today, and that if she showed up he should get to my place as soon as possible. I will not go to jail because of this woman. It seems out I was correct, since Image arrived at the house, knocking on the door and yelling for her to come in. M was beating down my door, so I instantly contacted my friend and asked him to come over. She was cursing my name and imploring me to allow her in, calling me every term in the book and questioning how I could be so callous. She's not wrong. I couldn't stop laughing when she was yelling and knocking on the door. I then questioned why she didn't simply walk in. As far as I know, she still had the keys. When my friend arrived, she was still yelling and cursing. So he began to record on his phone and remained in his truck. But this moron had brought his wife and a friend. So she went out and tried to calm her down. She approached them, wrapped her arms around her, and tried to get her to talk to her, before slapping her across the face and yelling at her to mind her business. That prompted my friend, who now has footage of the incident, to contact the police. She continued to yell and cuss until the police arrived. When they did, she worked quite hard to play the victim. One of the two cops approached her and she began to scream, telling them that I had struck her and thrown her out of the house. My friend and his wife told the second officer that when they arrived at the house, she was yelling and banging on the door. So they couldn't corroborate that it wasn't what Lisa claimed I had done. After that, officer finished speaking with my friend and his wife. He approached my door, and when I opened it and shouted, "That's him. He hit me. I want him arrested," she began to handcuff me when I told him that I could prove she was lying to you. I only need my phone. The officer stopped and asked me to show him the view from the outside cameras. After analyzing the video, he apologized for leaping to conclusions and presuming I was in the wrong. I told him I didn't blame him, but he then informed me that they had received 15 reports from neighbors and that during the EMS outburst, she cried out, "He hit me." See, the cops had already made their decision after dealing with the police for almost half an hour, and they ended up getting handcuffed and charged with disrupting the peace, public drunkenness, and DUI. W appeared and approached me, asking what had happened as the police drove them away. I showed her the video on my phone of everything. The officer then approached me and handed me the case number and some other documentation. Then we started asking inquiries regarding the costs. So, I went back inside and was soon followed by someone who sat next to me. She informed me she left her house for 10 minutes to run to the store. But when she returned, Lisa was no longer in the living room. So she assumed she had gone to bed after drinking too much wine. W and I talked for a while and she asked if she could spend the night. She told me she was welcome any time. She informed me that Lisa had to spend the night in jail. I'm not sure why, but they could bail her out in the morning. She told me that when I returned inside, she called her parents to tell them what was going on and to ask if they could help them out, because W does not have that sort of money. We enjoyed a beer together and then went to bed. When I woke up in the morning, W had already gone to meet her folks. I haven't heard from them or their parents, but I don't believe it was a phone chat. Okay, hopefully. And was allowed to chill down in jail. Update 5. Hello everyone. It's been a little more than a week since my last post and I have some modest news. If you missed my last update, it got taken down. I'm not sure why, but I'll give you an overview of what happened. I'll try to keep it brief and move on to the update. So, before my wife was served, I informed a buddy and asked him to be on standby in case she came over. I needed him there as a witness. Later in the day, my lawyer informed me that she had been served at work. And a few hours later, my wife was beating on my door. I called a friend as soon as I heard her. I also contacted W and told her she needed to come over because her sister was beating on my door. Soon after I got off the phone, my friend came and began filming my wife's outbursts from his truck. He had brought his wife for whatever reason and she came out to try to call him my wife. She approached her and attempted to pull her away. But my wife swung around and whacked her, ordering her to stay out of her business. When my wife punched him, he paused the tape and contacted the police. It took them maybe 10 minutes to get there. And when they did, my wife flipped a switch and began accusing me of abusing her. When I stepped outside to speak with the cops, he immediately began to handcuff me until I told him I had cameras that showed she was lying. He paused and allowed me to pull out my phone, after which he viewed the full video, revealing that everything she said was a lie. She started acting up again and the cop arrested her and made her take a breathalyzer as they drove her to their car. Debbie approached, asking what was going on. She arrived and stood next to me. And when the cop brought the paperwork in to apologize for jumping to conclusions, I simply assured him that I understood it was no big issue. Then they went inside. W stayed behind to get the complete story from him. Then joined me shortly after. She requested to stay over because, and we will have to spend the night in jail. When I woke up, W had already left. And that pretty much sums up my last update. I haven't heard from her since that night. but she phoned my lawyer to let him know he'll be representing them. Finally, we can begin the process. I also contacted Kevin's fiancée to see if she had any updates on her situation. We merely chatted back and forth, but she informed me she had kicked him out of her home and had her father and brother pack up all of his belongings and deliver them off at his house. She informed me that her father and brother wanted to beat him, but she asked them not to, and that she simply wants to put everything behind her and go on. She thanked me for checking on her and assured me that her close friends are there for her when she needs them. I provided her a link to my Reddit page, so she could see all of the support you all have shown me and her. On Friday, as soon as I got off work, I raced home, intending to spend the weekend in my cabin. When I arrived, W was in my driveway. She wanted to get her sister's belongings and had prepared a list of what my wife expected. I skimmed through it all, but one thing was either in a box or lying in my garage, waiting for pickup. I informed her that I would not transport her touching anything in here. I'm not going to take responsibility and want to claim I damaged her belongings. I told her I'd pay for a moving firm to come and pack and transport all of her belongings for her, because I'm going to my cabin and don't have time to deal with EMS issues. She thought that would be nice and hoped I had fun. She took a box of EMS clothing and placed it in her car. She then turned to me and requested if she might come along this time. I said, okay, why don't you go back home and drop off the box and pack a bag for her? She was already pulling up by the time I finished going to the supermarket and packing the truck. I locked up my house and headed to the cottage with W. The weekend went quite nicely. The last time I was up there I discovered how special this place is. It offers a lovely view and is fully private, so you won't have to deal with other people. It's a location where you can actually breathe and unwind. I called the moving firm on Monday and 3 people and a big truck arrived today, Tuesday, and began loading. I kept each box open and recorded as they closed and picked it up. I photographed all of the furniture and documented how the movers loaded it. I thanked them for their patience and tipped them an additional $1.50 each. I then sent all of the recordings and photos to my lawyer and continued with my day. The house appears empty but yet clean, without any of her belongings. When I started the procedure, my lawyer advised me not to remove anything that could be considered shared. So I arranged the majority of the furnishings and a storage unit. I had been sleeping in the guest room since she departed. So, until I started writing this piece, I had been buying all new furniture. I'll most likely keep the most of it in the garage now that I have enough space. I won't be keeping the house even if I win the divorce. It currently holds too many bad memories. Thank you for reading. Update 6. Hello, read it. It has been a long since I posted. I coach high school baseball, so between obtaining a divorce, dealing with my soon-to-be ex, and coaching these kids, I don't have much free time right now. A lot has transpired, so this could be a lengthy post. Please bear with me as it has been a little more than a month since my last post. I'll offer a brief summary of what happened in my previous post. In case you forgot, if this is your first time seeing my post, or if you need to go back and reread something, everything is still on my profile. So we left off with him being detained for punching my friend's wife and telling the police I assaulted her. And after giving them the video of everything that happened, I was released while she was hauled to jail on a variety of charges. I didn't hear from them for a while until her lawyer contacted mine, informing him that he would be representing them and handling the lawyer-to-lawyer formalities. I contacted Kevin's fiancée to find out what was going on, and she informed me that she had kicked him out and her brother and father had moved all of Kevin's belongings to his new home. I had intended to go to my cabin after work, but W was waiting for me in my driveway. She needed to pick up some items for her sister after telling her I wouldn't touch any of her belongings. I informed her that I would pay for a moving company the next week. W asked if she could come up to my cabin with me at the time, and I consented, largely because everyone said she needed a vacation from her sister. And the last time she asked me, I declined. I documented everything with the movers to ensure she couldn't say I broke something she considered special, and then emailed it to my lawyer. That's pretty much all that happened in the previous post. Here's the update. A few days after the movers delivered her belongings to Lisa, my lawyer received documentation claiming that I had damaged her belongings and asking that I pay her $1,500 or she would take me to court over it. My lawyer gave her all of the tapes and images, asking where the damages were that he claimed I caused. He told me that all this does is show the judge how insane she is, and while it may be a headache right now, it will all be wonderful proof when it comes time for court. I don't think her lawyer anticipated how diligent I am and how I will picture and document everything. When I found out about my wife's infidelity, I was drawn to this blog and read all of the horror stories about what their former spouses had done to them. And I refuse to become another one of those stories. I've prepared myself for practically every possible claim she could make. At this point, I wouldn't say anything to the pastor, and he'd phone me every other day, but I never answered if she left a voicemail. I do not bother listening to it. I just sent it to my lawyer. Every time I submit something to my lawyer, he informs me that you are a lawyer's wet dream. You listen to everything I say. You gather a massive amount of evidence on your own. I have yet to have a client that has performed so well. I was not exaggerating. When I said, he repeats this every time. However, it always makes me happy. Getting that reinforcement from him that I'm doing everything correctly makes me feel a little better about the situation. My lawyer told me about 2 or 3 weeks ago that we have enough proof to bury her outside of court, and that even if it fails, it will reflect well on us for trying. So we scheduled a meeting a week ago in a neutral lawyer's office. Before we met, he instructed me not to respond to anything anyone said, and that everything we said would be recorded for a judge. We will read it if it goes to court. We arrived in the early morning and entered the office. To my astonishment, she was already there, waiting with her attorney. We stepped in, and the lawyers began meeting each other, while I sat there, waiting for what would happen. Rebecca's lawyer began by asking what we had to offer. Mine sneered, saying that, despite the pile of evidence of adultery and Rebecca's inappropriate behavior, the only thing we'll offer is half of the home selling price and half of the savings. That is more than any court would give you. Essentially, you will leave with the same possessions you brought into the marriage. Then he looked directly at me and said, if you decide to go to court, I will have you read every message aloud. Then I'll post sanitized photos for everyone and the court to see. However, he did not say that at the time and required you to describe in detail what you were doing in each shot. Then I'll pull up your recent charges and play the video that was recorded that night. She began to cry as she looked at me, asking if there was anything she could do to make things right. I stated, you've been on me since before our wedding. I can only confirm it was a few weeks before the wedding, but I believe it was much longer. You cannot make me forget or forgive you for what you have done. Sign the paperwork. This is more than you deserve, and I want to be done with this whole fake you've built. She cried uncontrollably for 15 minutes before having to excuse herself to the restroom. When she returned, she was still in tears, but she quickly signed the paperwork and left. So, in about a month, everything will be filed, and all I'll have to do is sell my house. I'd like to thank everyone for reading and offering advice. I read through the majority of the comments and followed the suggestions given there. Nothing else appears to be going on, although I could be mistaken. If it does, I'll let you know. However, this will probably be my final post. Once again, thank you, everybody. I hope what occurred to me has benefited at least one person out there. Wow, OP, thank goodness you collected all of the proof. You crossed all your T's, dotted all your I's, and had a wicked good lawyer. I'm sorry she disrespected you and your relationship. You're an intelligent dude, and for her to believe she could get away with something like this was dumb, regardless of what occurred between you and him. I'm delighted you were able to keep your contact with W. It is critical to have those folks around you for support. It sounds like you have an excellent support system. It makes a guy wonder if there is something in the future between you and W, or if it is strictly platonic. I suppose I can help. Here is the next story. I am 43 years old and my wife is 40 years old. We have been married for 6 years. We have 2 children, a 14-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. Our marriage was difficult at first, but we persevered and emerged much stronger as a result. We married young, so maturity wasn't fully developed, but we knew we loved each other and could overcome any obstacles to our marriage. I'm still unsure if this was wishful thinking. Anyway, my wife has been the manager of a large advertising company for 3 years, and I have been an engineer for 7 years. Our careers both paid well and provided a decent standard of living for our family. We were a tight-knit family. As parents, we always make sure to be present for our children so that they can make wonderful memories. Regardless of how busy we were, we always made time for our children. Honestly, I consider myself a good father and husband. I made mistakes with my wife from time to time, but I would do everything for her. And learning that she was having a long-term affair rocked me to the core. This gets me to discovery. The wife was acting distant. In fact, the last 2 years preceding this one were the most difficult. She didn't appear to enjoy anything I did. She repeatedly compared me to her boss. Yes, I know now, and he would constantly tell me how he would handle certain situations. Cannot read her mind. Well, her boss can. Don't take the initiative to invite her out on dates and make her feel special. Well, her employer does it for his wife. Why did I act so immature? I'd ask her what she wanted me to do to spice up our romantic lives. Her customary response is, don't ask. You must already know and do it. So I looked up 5 books since I was stumped and assumed that someone else would know the answer. Anything I tried was met with either half-hearted approval or bitter disappointment. My wife had never been like this in the years I had known her. So I assumed that my inability to make her happy was something I needed to address. Little did I realize that I wasn't the one doing the fixing the entire time. We were really close to her boss and his wife. They also have children, and the youngsters adored each other. We took them to barbecues, family gatherings, parks, and arcade games. They've come to our house several times, and we've gone to theirs. It's not surprising that we grew close. I would talk to her boss about our marital troubles. He gave me some good advice. I believed he was a brilliant person. Anyway, back to our discovery. I had grown emotionally exhausted of my wife's expectations that I improve myself or the marriage would end. I was taken aback by her attitude because prior to this, I felt we had a wonderful marriage. One night, she was laughing and giggling while messaging someone. I was sitting next to her in bed and was interested. When I leaned in to take a look, she fiercely drew away from me. She was furious and immediately asked me what I was doing. I told her I wanted to see what the joke was, but she said it wasn't my business and went to the bathroom. I believe that was the day I realized there was some sort of affair taking place. I did not have any proof, however. I made the mistake of asking her personally the following day. I was indignant and denied all wrongdoing. I didn't have access to her phone, but I desperately needed to know the truth. I asked for her phone, but she refused. Only later in the night did she reluctantly hand me the phone. Almost every text message she sent to particular recipients was removed. I could tell because some exchanges sounded contradictory, while others were completely ludicrous. I returned the phone to her, and we didn't talk about it again until a month later, when I was able to get a friend to check the phone and recover erased messages. My wife had gotten another phone and barely used the one she handed me. Some texts were discovered, and it was only via parts and pieces that I was able to prove that an affair was taking place. And you've already guessed it, her boss. I knew if I challenged her she would find a way to get out of it. So I done my time. I was a wreck, though. All I could think about was how it would affect the children. The scenario was terrible and I sobbed in front of my friend. I still didn't want to end the marriage, so 3 days later I purchased How to Help Your Spouse Heal After an Affair. It's okay to shake your head. I began reading, hoping that if I delivered it to my wife, she would cease the foolishness. I wanted my wife back, and I wanted to save our marriage. I had planned to speak with her on Saturday to straighten things out. But she had informed me they had an emergency at work and not to wait on her. Of course, I phoned the employer that day to check the narrative she told me, but received no response. They were not open on Saturdays. I tried calling her phone, but there was no answer. She returned home at 2 a.m. on Sunday, showered, and went straight to bed. When I inquired why she was late, she skirted the topic, saying she had already advised me not to wait for her. I was sick of it. I didn't give her the book I'd brought. I was in pain, and she didn't care. She witnessed my pain, but didn't care. I asked her supervisor, his wife, if she knew anything. I was desperate for stability, and to this day I don't regret it. She was as surprised as I was to learn she wanted to confront her husband. But I told her he'd definitely lie and attempt to cover it better, just like my wife did. We met at her house to talk about what was going on, and I handed her the little proof we had. She needed more evidence, so we agreed to gather and compare evidence from both sides. I began snooping on my wife more, and she did the same with her spouse. It was simple for her to obtain undeniable proof. Her husband was so arrogant that he did not even erase the texts between him and my wife from his phone. And the few texts I discovered before suddenly made sense. And we had a complete picture of how long the affair lasted. 2 years. The boss's wife was furious, and so was I. She wanted vengeance on them, and so did I. They slept together everywhere. Her house is my dwelling. Expensive hotels and business trips. It was disgusting to read all of it. They even texted each other pictures, but we opted to ignore them. Because we didn't want to scare ourselves with the photos. We desired vengeance without engaging in an affair. We agreed that if they desired each other, they could have each other. We both went through divorce papers at roughly the same time. We were dead determined on it. Our husbands had no idea that we knew, and we did our part. By the time we got our ducks in a row, they were at it again. This time, by partnering with the boss's wife. We knew where and how they would be served. We knew which hotel they had booked for their weekend of pleasure. I personally went with the sheriff. I waited in the lobby while the sheriff set things up and summoned my wife to her room. She did dress in a bathrobe, and I have no further concerns. She's panicking and asks what I was doing there. It was a fair distance from our house, but not too far. The sheriff requested confirmation of her name and information. She confusedly responded in the affirmative and was served. It was quite pleasant to witness her astonished expression. But I didn't want to rub it in, so I walked away knowing the work was over. She refused to let me go, gripping my arm, drawing me back, and demanding to know what was going on. I told her you had an affair and I'm leaving you, simple. She began yelling at me and pulled my arm hard. The sheriff had to step in and urge her to release me immediately. She did so while crying, saying she could explain. I've got the wrong idea. It is my fault. I was getting angry, so I left quickly to get home. My wife informed her boss, and he panicked. According to what I was told, he rushed home just to be served there. We didn't give them enough time to collect their thoughts. We caught them off guard, just like they did with us. My divorce will be complete in a few months. Hers might be taking a little longer. Both my wife and her boss have been fighting us about the divorces. Neither wants a divorce. The reasons I've heard are that they never intended to leave their wives. It was completely sexual, nothing else. People had terrible affairs and still end up with a beautiful marriage. They made a mistake and would appreciate the opportunity to correct the issue. I asked my wife what she felt the conclusion of everything was. She claimed she was going with the flow, but acted utterly out of character. She is not the same person anymore. I called her an idiot. People around me are calling me bad because I gave my wife another chance. My children are aware of what is going on in an age-appropriate manner and fully support me. But, like it, if we stay together my determination weakens. Furthermore, we continue to live in the same house. And my wife is going to therapy and reading the book I purchased. It is becoming increasingly difficult for me to stick to my guns. She claims she is sorry and will do whatever it takes. I only need to hear that she is sorry she was caught. She has described me as a bitter, angry person who cannot see past the negativity. She apologized afterward, but I know how she feels. I still talk to the boss's wife. My wife really despises that. She believes I will have a revenge affair with her boss's wife. Which is why I will not give us another chance. She continually asked me not to start contact with their boss's wife. Exactly as she had with her employer. I told her she was nuts. We did not do anything incorrect. Why should I respect your thoughts right now? See, I think I'm finished. I have no respect for her. She still refuses to give up and is actively attempting to communicate with me about her thoughts and processes surrounding the affair. I regard them as excuses, so I do not entertain. She wants me to do treatment with her. I've read several places where the therapist blames the victim. So I was like, hell no. She wants me to read infidelity literature beside her. What's the purpose if we're going to get divorced anyway? She wants to be intimate. I told her she wasn't going to influence me with sex. She claims it is not manipulation. And that she simply wants to show me how much she loves me. I corrected and said, you love me. Now the women around me, including my mother, are unhappy with me because they believe individuals make errors. And my wife discovers through her blunders that she genuinely loves me. I promised everyone that I would never be someone's fallback plan. I feel terrible for treating her the way I do. I still adore her, despite the hatred. Am I being unkind to her? She's working extremely hard, but I don't care. Should I reconsider our divorce? People say I'm moving too fast and will regret it. Is this true? I'm not sure what is genuine and what isn't. Before we get into the tail updates, I can confidently say that your wife is nasty. And I completely agree that divorce is in order. Spelling a word incorrectly. And referring to John Jim's 2-year emotional and physical affair. Behind your back in your home is betrayal, plain and simple. She did not make an error. She betrayed you. And that is how I would respond to anyone who claims she made a mistake. She didn't consider you for the past 2 years. Your relationship with her at that time was a lie. Because you were never given the choice to stay or leave. As a result of her actions. Stick to your firearms. This was not a one-time thing. She lied to you every day by keeping her affair a secret. She lied to your face even though you knew the truth. The time and effort she put in for the boss should have been directed toward you. It sounds like she has taken you for granted all these years. The marriage you knew has ended. Divorce her and then decide whether or not to continue the relationship. All right. Now it's time for update 1. First and foremost, my wife and I are currently in a terrific place. It's not because we're reconciling. No, I am still divorcing her. The latest update I posted, which was removed by the auto-moderator, included a detailed explanation of our position. In summary, my wife is still asking for another chance. And will do whatever it takes to obtain it. I won't give it to her because her affair lasted far too long for me to get over. If it had been a one-night stand, the story would have been very different. But no. 2 years is like a slap in the face. I've been to a couple therapy sessions with her. Because I'm not a monster and still adore her. One session was very good. Perhaps you understand that my wife is regretful. She has not been flawless in dealing with the consequences of her affair. She has, nevertheless, made a significant effort. The second session was a shambles of her resentment against me. For constantly contacting the boss's wife and her fear of a vengeance affair. It was the most angry I'd ever been during this entire ordeal. And we argued a lot later because I refused to do what she wanted. Which was to avoid interaction with the boss's wife. That was fixed when I told her that there would be no retaliation. I know I don't owe her anything, but she'll still be my wife until we divorce. And I still want to keep my commitments. I've been going to a couple more sessions with her to check how she's progressing. Yes, the therapist specializes in both individual and marital therapy. No, I'm not attending these sessions because, deep down, I want to save my marriage. I want to see my wife's improvement, participate if I have to. After the divorce, I will gracefully step away. The boss's wife is still leaving him. Her husband is still battling with her over the divorce. She is equally adamant as I am. And I'll admit we do confide in each other when we're feeling down. I still don't see any affair happening. We are just nice with each other. That is all. She is a tough and independent woman who will not tolerate bullshit from anyone. My children are fine. They understand that just because we are divorcing does not mean we love them any less. They do not desire a divorce, but understand why it is important for us in an age-appropriate way. My wife no longer works at the advertising company. She works elsewhere. She quit soon after I served her. She has had absolutely no communication with her previous boss. According to her, she sought counsel on forums to save her marriage and followed that advice. I have been reading a lot here. At first, I couldn't understand why people remained with adulterers. But after seeing my wife work her tail off to be a better person, I understand the urge. She is not a monster. She is simply flawed and has made terrible decisions that she is learning to overcome. She has given me every possible opportunity to be granted another chance. I'm not sure if I have it. The closer divorce is to being finalized, the more at ease I feel. We recently had a lengthy talk about her request for a chance after divorce. She has offered a post-nuptial agreement. I wasn't absolutely opposed to it, but it would be a long path for her to walk before I could even contemplate it. She appears willing, but I don't understand how that would help either of us. To be honest, a large part of me desires this divorce for a transient sense of justice. It's the only way I can receive justice without lowering myself to the level of an adulteress. My mother and I reconciled when I revealed more about my wife's affair. However, after knowing the details, she is upset with my wife. I'm not sure how to navigate that one. Stay strong, op. She'll either become more lovey-dovey or insane. Remember how much money she squandered by cheating all the time. She stole from your family, and the affection she withheld from you harmed your self-esteem. You will never get that back. Not once in 2 years did she consider putting her children or you first. The only reason she is making progress is because she was caught. I can't wait for you to be rid of that toxic waste of a human. Okay, enough of that. Now for an update on the revenge incident. As many of you know, my wife is concerned about a revenge affair. The simple answer is that I still communicate with and see the other woman she deceived. My wife is much more insecure than she is heavy. Is that how it was built? OBS is a youthful, gorgeous model who owns a profitable business. It makes my wife fearful that I would succumb to temptation and cheat on her as retaliation. I still can't believe she had the guts to give me the 2 wrongs don't make a right lecture. Of course, she is not wrong, and I have no intention of ever following through. But her hypocrisy enrages me. Every time I go to see Fat, like yesterday, she becomes incredibly depressed or clingy. I'm not sure how many times she's thrown herself at me to keep me from cheating on her. I reject her attempts, which simply makes matters worse. It totally astounded me that cheaters are so selfish, just concerned with themselves and their agony, while the betrayed must trudge on and try to pick up the pieces. Another thing that our children still see is their own children. I never go to OBS without my kids, but my wife still thinks I'm as cruel as she was, and will take any opportunity to bang the woman. This is laughable nonsense. My son is still living in their vacation home, begging OBS to take him back. I'm not going to lie, it gives me immense delight to see him endure the repercussions. He hasn't tried to threaten me because I have so much power over him. He has to deal with the reality that I am still in touch with his wife. He may visit his children whenever he wants, but he doesn't want to see me. So he waits till I am not present before paying a visit. I pity the guy. My wife has been really sorry. She showered me with adoration, which I shrugged aside. I am not in a good position. We have a therapy session today, and I feel compelled to express all of the grief and hurt I've experienced as a result of her actions. The rage I am experiencing is becoming unbearable. Opie, go for it. You should unload in treatment. Whether you're about to divorce, why does she care whether you're going on a date? She lost it when she cheated. How selfish to demand your allegiance. She need intervention-level assistance for her problems. Sure, she may feel awful because she wants to restore the relationship. But I don't see it happening right now. Now on to update 3. Quote, it finally dawned on me. I felt I'd squandered all these years with a lady who was nothing but worthless. But she gave me wonderful children and memories. These are the things I will never forget and appreciate as a man. But I finally understood. I'm capable of doing better than her, and I'm going to do better than her. I've had a deluge of individuals offer me advice on how to handle this scenario. I finally realized that I deserve better than her. She screwed me over. When another man caught her eye, she made me feel inferior. She literally spent her energy in another guy. I can't believe I'm only now accepting that I'm over her. Now, she will do whatever it takes to keep me. She is now pouring her energy in us. She now wants me to be happy despite the fact that she previously did not care. She now wants to be this daring person in sex with me. The sex we had was never mind-blowing, but I enjoyed it. Now I realize how much I've missed out on due of her texts with OM. I only know the tip of the iceberg in terms of how graphic their encounters were. She wants to show me how much she loves me now, despite the fact that she has previously been pretty lazy. Lazy sex speaks volumes to me. Now she gives me room and is happy and supportive of everything I do. When? Previously, everything revolved around giving her attention while also providing for her. Now she respects my boundaries and goes above and beyond to expand them. Now she considers me the king. I wish she saw me like previously, but I had to knock her off her pedestal first. She is now the ideal woman, but I believe this is only temporary. Now she's absolutely open with me about everything. She is brutally honest, even if it means upsetting me or embarrassing herself. I've never seen a woman with a constant expression of humiliation on her face before. She wishes the affair never happened. I can see how hard she kicks herself every day. I can see the sadness on her face when I'm not interested in anything she says. She appears miserable, especially when she attempts to hide it. It makes me despise myself at times, but I believe it is important. Why can't I see this as anything positive? Why can't I criticize her for her act right now? They show remorse, right? Many people have long-term affairs and emerge stronger than before, right? Why am I making decisions based on emotion rather than mature objectivity? Someone else will end up with the better and improved version of her, while I embark on another dubious relationship. Why not fight for it when everything appears to point to something positive and promising in the future? These are the lines I was given, and I only have one answer. I refuse to take rudeness. Perhaps I was willing to in the early stages of discovery, but I swiftly awoke. This is to respond to those who have paid me and regularly inquired about my position. I'm going to spend Christmas with my complete family and then move on from my wife. I determined to quit listening to the crap I made up in my head. To maintain my wife's grip over me and completely abandon the idea of her. I won't date her or give us another shot. We are done for good. I like to say that my wife is not a villain, and that is correct. I want her to be happy as well, but it will never be with me. She demonstrated that to me. I contacted her yesterday and offered her dinner after the holidays, in exchange for her support when I was at my lowest point. She said she'd love to. I realize this doesn't happen very frequently. But we were quite supportive of each other during everything, and I owe her gratitude. Before folks start commenting on how much I planned this with Fat, I honestly didn't. My emotions have been so messed up in recent years that the concept of another lady has never crossed my mind. It's time for dinner. There's nothing else. Unless both of us want it. But as divorce approaches, the more I understand I do have options. And one possibility was right there. What about Mom? I don't give a flying flip about him. I'll marry again, and I'll tell it to any woman. Despite the fact that my divorce has been quite straightforward. I'm losing a lot of money. Still. Marriage seems like a fraud to me now. Sorry for sounding so cynical right now. I don't want to insult anyone, but I'm still jaded. I gave this woman my best years, and I'm beginning to realize how little I got back. I hope you're seeing it clearly now. Your wife has always owed you her best effort. She was the one who wanted you to make a lifetime commitment to her. To be devoted. To provide for and nurture her children. All of that. She decided you were the right man for the job, but she didn't give it her all. She gave it to the OLM instead. She lowered you and lifted him up. She paid no attention to you and focused entirely on him. She went out of her way to blow his mind in the bedroom. And her sex life with you was half-assed. She was demanding of you, yet generous to him. And now she wants to be the wife of the year. Please. This is regret. If all of her love, support, and desire for you was genuine, she gave it to you rather than him. There may be remorse, but you don't have a 2-year affair. And leave the house better than your husband ever did. Unless you truly do not appreciate, respect, or love your husband. It's simply not doable. There's a good chance she'll learn from this. And will be a better partner to you in the future, never cheating again. And I'm sure it's infuriating for you to consider. But this does not make her worth remaining with. Her education cost you your heart, which never should have happened. So, move onward. Find a woman who does not need to break your heart or ruin her own life. Before learning to value you, who respects you and wishes you happiness and fulfillment. All right. Update. The four are formally divorced, plus the date with the abyss. It is over. My ex and I have officially separated for good. It happened around 3 weeks ago. For several days afterward, I wept as if I had lost a loved one. I believe it affected me particularly hard that my marriage broke so spectacularly. I've never sobbed that hard since I initially discovered the affair. I raged a lot, too. Definitely one of my low points. Everything has been prepared for my ex. Partially on my part for the sake of the kids. She moved out and I'm looking to purchase her out of her share of the property. She currently resides in an apartment. She has suffered a significant setback which has left her feeling depressed. She's still seeing the therapist, still interested in reading and researching infidelity. I'm not sure exactly why. We had long discussions before and after the divorce, minimal physical contact. I know I shouldn't entertain her right now, but she is still the mother of my children. And I want to be a decent co-parent. I'm very logical about the problem, thanks in large part to this community and others. Of course, it is the same music she wants to reconcile. And I believe it is too risky for me to put myself in that circumstance again. Unfortunately, I'm not in the mood to give her that gift. This past weekend I took OB to dinner with the sole aim of enjoying each other's company and speaking. We chatted about all kinds of stuff. Things became flirtatious between us. And I must admit that I was hesitant to entertain the quickly shifting tone. So, I think I should say that the night concluded in a pretty passionate manner. I'm sorry for the TMI. It was definitely the most mind-blowing sex I've ever experienced. OBS is far superior to my ex in terms of generosity. I did not expect for it to go that far, but OBS was eager. And I learned a few new tricks in the sack. It was the first time I'd ever had someone who was eager to satisfy me rather than vice versa. I guess I should stop calling her OBS now that she has divorced her ex. However, for the sake of privacy, I will simply utilize that. To be honest, I don't think we'll continue our relationship. I believe the hormones and liquor got the better of us that night. She wants to, but I am undecided. I need to sort myself out emotionally, and I believe she needs as well. However, I am feeling quite fine. People may not appreciate hearing this. But the sex I had with Fat greatly aided my leftover self-esteem issues. I felt wanted alive and finally realized what I was losing out on. I could never settle for robotic sex again. What was more rewarding was knowing that I wasn't cheating and hadn't compromised my morals. Overall, I'm quite proud of how I handled this situation. I was not flawless, but I did my best. Even though I lost a significant amount of money in the process. I'm probably coming out far better than many others. But it was because I was willing to take advice and listen to those with expertise, rather than going in blind and hoping for the best. For that, I shall be eternally grateful to you. You and everyone else who listened helped me from further harming my self-esteem. Takeaways. Respect yourself. Never accept disrespect from anyone else, not even those closest to you. Everyone deserves to be in a healthy, fulfilling relationship. Never accept leftovers from your mate. Every committed partnership should involve a healthy and fulfilling sexual experience. If your partner isn't giving you his or her all but has done it before with someone else or in an affair, don't tolerate it. I am not advocating for sexual abuse or rape. If your partner refuses to meet them, simply express your disappointment. Do not settle for dull sex unless you and your partner agree. It's all right to move away from it. Communicate repeatedly. I cannot overstate how essential this is if you are ever betrayed. Only you can completely heal yourself. It took me a long time to realize this. This is wonderful to hear, OP. The notion is that those who cheat are more sexually active and expressive. Whereas in fact they're generally the neglected and constrained spouses. It's wonderful that you've proven to each other that you are not sexually defective. I hope you shared what you told us with our boys. Internet strangers, since it will matter a lot to her to know that someone who had sex with both her and the lady who broke her marriage believes she is the better lay. You are probably right to trust your instincts and not pursue things further with her as spending time with this woman. Probably not very helpful in moving on from this event in your life. Alright, on to the final update. Closure. I'm okay. There were no mishaps, no poof. I have vanished. I am still. And I see that OBS is still my girlfriend. She was able to settle her case that way. And what about child custody and finances? She could have been vindictive and took him to the cleaners. But she handled the matter with maturity. There is considerable conflict between the youngsters about all of this. We were attempting to deal with it as effectively as possible. We had to begin therapy to ensure that they adjust correctly. And understand that OBS and I's relationship has little influence on them. But we do consider them vital in how this scenario is handled. This is really difficult because not everyone is on board. My daughter has my accent. I do not enjoy being around each other. I truly believe they both blame each other for how things turned out. And I am not kidding. There is tension when those two are in close proximity to one another. My ex still wants a second chance and is probably upset. That OBS is getting in the way of my seeing things properly. And not tossing away everything we have forever. This woman is so misled that I am actually concerned about her actions. She tried something during a 4th of July celebration. A friend of mine came through. I shut it down, but perhaps not forcefully enough. I didn't trust the people who stated she'd be pining after me. But you folks were correct. She wants to crawl back in a worst way. OBS is allowing me to handle that. But she's also sick of my ex. Did I mention my ex despises orbs with a passion? I truly believed that my ex was changing for the better. But ever since I left her. But for someone else, she's been a disaster. That's what I still don't understand. I treated her better than anyone else in my life. Yet she treated me poorly. But the moment I screamed "F you," she does backflips to attract my attention. I'm not sure whether I should be angry about it. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe. If you haven't already. Also, write a comment below with your thoughts on what transpired. Take care.